My name is Emily Carter, and the night my husband hit me while I was 6 months pregnant is a night I still feel in my bones. But what broke him was something the nurse whispered to me when she thought he was not listening. Something so simple, yet so painful, that he froze like a man whose heart had been cracked open. I tell this story slowly, because even now, my voice shakes in a quiet way. Not out of fear, but out of remembering. Remembering how love can turn into something you no longer recognize. Remembering how a home can go from warm to cold in just one season. Remembering how a woman can lose herself trying to save someone who no longer wants to be saved. That night started like an ordinary evening. I was tired. My back hurt the way pregnant women always say it does. The baby had been kicking all day, a strong and steady rhythm that made me smile even in my exhaustion. But the house felt different, to silent, to heavy, like the air was waiting for something to happen. When my husband, Mark, walked through the front door, I could smell the anger on him before he even spoke. It was not alcohol, not drugs. It was something worse. Disappointment mixed with frustration, stirred into a storm he did not know how to control. He looked at me the way people look at an unwanted reminder, and I felt myself shrinking inside, like I always did when he had that look. I wish I could tell you there was a big argument that led to it. I wish I could say I yelled, or pushed, or fought, but the truth is painfully simple. I asked him if he had eaten dinner, and he snapped. I remember the sound of his hand more than the impact. A sharp, cutting sound that filled the whole living room. My cheek burned, my knees weakened, and the baby kicked hard like it felt everything with me. When I fell, I did not cry. I did not scream. I only held my belly and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's here." I think that made him angrier. He paced, cursed under his breath, and then, he left. Just walked out the door like nothing happened. A neighbor saw me on the porch, holding my stomach, trembling. She called 911 before I even spoke. When we reached the fluorescent lights felt too bright for the darkness inside me, and that's when the nurse leaned close, looked at me, looked at him, and said the one sentence that changed everything. Before I tell you what the nurse said, I need to take you back a little, back to the days when Mark was not the man who raised his hand at me. Because stories like mine do not start with one slap. They start with tiny cracks we are too in love or too hopeful to see. I met Mark Carter when I was 22 years old. He was the kind of man who walked into a room and made you feel like you were the only one he saw. Warm, confident, protective. The kind of man every mother hopes her daughter will find. And at the beginning, that is exactly who he was. We lived in Henderson, Kentucky, in a quiet neighborhood where people waved at each other from their porches and children rode bicycles in circles around the cul-de-sac. Mark worked as a mechanic at his father's old shop. I worked part-time at the library while finishing my associate degree. Our life was simple, beautiful even. We cooked dinner together most nights, sat on the couch watching old movies, and talked about our dreams. Mark wanted a son. He said it with a softness that made me smile. "He'll be my little buddy," he told me once, resting his hand on my stomach when I wasn't even pregnant yet. "And if we have a girl," he added, "she'll be daddy's princess." Back then, I believed him. Back then, I believed everything he said. The first small crack appeared the day Mark's father died. It was sudden, an accident. A heart attack that took him before the ambulance could reach their house. Mark changed in ways I didn't understand. He became quiet, then restless, then angry at things that didn't deserve anger. One evening, about a month after the funeral, I came home from the library and found him in the garage, sitting on the floor surrounded by his father's old tools. His hands were shaking. I knelt beside him and whispered, "Mark, talk to me." He didn't look up. He just said, "I'm fine." But nothing about him was fine. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't always make people cry. Sometimes it turns into pressure. Sometimes it turns into fear. And sometimes, it turns into a shadow that follows a man everywhere. I tried to support him. I tried to be patient. I tried to be understanding even when I didn't know what I was understanding. But little by little, he began to pull away. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him with a heart full of hope. I imagined him lifting me off the ground, laughing, maybe even crying. But instead, he sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his face. "Are you sure?" he asked, not happy, not excited, just overwhelmed. "Yes," I whispered, "I'm sure." He nodded slowly but didn't smile. I told myself he just needed time. I told myself the excitement would come later. I told myself men sometimes react differently. And for a little while, he did try. He bought a tiny blue onesie even though we didn't know the baby's gender yet. He put his hand on my belly at night and listened for kicks. He even painted the nursery light gray, humming softly while he worked. But whenever work was stressful, whenever finances got tight, whenever the world weighed too heavily on him, he snapped. Not with violence at first, but with words. You don't understand pressure, Emily. You don't know real responsibility. You're too emotional. You're too soft. Each sentence felt like a small stone hitting me. Individually, they didn't seem dangerous. But over time, they created bruises no one else could see. Around my 5th month of pregnancy, Mark began to hate when I visited my mom. He wouldn't forbid it, but he would sigh, or look disappointed, or say quietly, "I guess you don't want to be home with me." So I stayed home more. I stopped meeting my friends for lunch, stopped going to the crafts group at church, stopped talking to people about how I felt. Isolation doesn't happen in one day. It happens when a woman convinces herself she's just being supportive, without realizing she's slowly erasing her own happiness. I thought I was being a good wife, but I was becoming invisible to myself. Our arguments were always about little things: how long I took to cook dinner, why I didn't remind him about his appointment, why I bought a different brand of cereal. They were never about the real reasons he was angry, but I didn't know that then. One night, I asked gently, "Mark, do you still love me?" He stared at me, confused. "Why would you even ask that?" "Because," I whispered, "you feel far away." He looked away and said, "I'm just tired, Emily." He wasn't cruel. Not then, not fully. Just tired, lost, breaking slowly in ways he didn't know how to explain. The day before he hit me, we were sitting at the dinner table eating chicken and rice. The house was quiet. The TV was off. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you think I'll be a good father?" I froze a little, surprised. "Yes," I said softly, "you will." He didn't believe me. I could see it in the way his eyes lowered. "What if I'm not?" he whispered. "What if I mess up everything? What if I fail him, or her?" I reached across the table and took his hand. "You won't fail," I said. "We'll figure this out together." But he pulled his hand back like my touch burned him. "I don't know how to be a dad without him," he said. "I don't know how to do anything without him." That was the moment I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Mark was grieving not only the loss of his father, he was grieving the loss of the man he thought he was supposed to be. And I, pregnant, hopeful, tired, could not fill that emptiness for him. By the time the next evening arrived, we were both worn down. The house felt heavy again. The air felt tense. I could feel something coming, but I didn't know what. He came home late. His clothes smelled like engine oil and sweat. His eyes looked empty. When I asked if he had eaten dinner, I thought I was caring for him, but to him, it sounded like questioning, like criticism, like another reminder of everything he thought he was failing at. And then his hand met my face. I remember the floor. I remember the cold tiles. I remember the baby kicking in panic against my ribcage. I remember whispering to my child instead of protecting myself. And I remember Mark's face, not angry anymore, but shocked, like he didn't recognize himself. He ran out before I could speak. Maybe he ran from me. Maybe he ran from what he had done. Or maybe he ran from the man he was turning into. I will never know. When my neighbor helped me into her car, I kept saying, I'm fine, but my voice sounded like a stranger's. At the emergency room, the nurses moved quickly but spoke softly to me, like they sensed that loud sympathy would make me break. They checked the baby first. The heartbeat was strong, a solid, steady drum that made my heart loosen just a little. I cried quietly, not from pain, but from relief. Mark arrived minutes later, his face pale, his hands shaking. He didn't come near me at first. He just stood by the door, watching the nurses do their work, watching me hold my stomach, watching the life he had almost harmed. And then when he took one slow step toward me, the nurse said the sentence that stopped him in his tracks. Her voice was firm, gentle, and full of truth. "A man who loves his child never hurts the child's mother. Not even once." Mark froze. His breath caught. His shoulders fell. Because for the first time, he understood what he had done. And that is where everything began to change. The nurse's words floated in the air like something sacred, something sharp, something final. "A man who loves his child never hurts the child's mother. Not even once." The whole room seemed to stop breathing after she said it. Mark did not move. His eyes widened just a little, the way people look when they suddenly see a truth they had been running from. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. My hands were still on my stomach, feeling the steady little kicks that reminded me I wasn't alone. My baby was safe, at least physically. The nurse walked away to give us space, though I didn't feel ready for any space with him. But she must have known something I didn't. That silence between two hurting people can reveal more than words ever will. Mark stood near the foot of the bed for a long time. Emily, he whispered. My name sounded so fragile on his tongue that it almost didn't sound like my name at all. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to punish him, not because I wanted him to suffer, but because I didn't know what to say. There are moments in life when words simply don't exist yet. He took a step closer, then another. I'm so sorry. His voice cracked, but I still couldn't look at him. Not yet. I watched the heart monitor instead. My baby's heartbeat, strong, consistent, unbroken. I remember thinking, why is the smallest one in this room the strongest of us all? They kept me overnight for observation. A nurse checked my vitals every hour. Another checked the baby's heartbeat. Mark wasn't allowed to stay in the room. Hospital rules, they said. Or maybe it was the nurse quietly arranging it that way. I didn't ask. He stayed in the hallway, pacing. I could hear the soft squeak of his shoes every few minutes, like a slow, nervous pattern. Around midnight, a young nurse named Leela sat beside me while adjusting my pillow. You don't have to talk about it, she said softly, but you're not alone. Her voice was warm, not pushy. I whispered, I don't know what to do. That's okay, she said. No one knows right away. I stared at the ceiling. The lights were dimmed. The room felt safe, safer than home had felt in months. Do you think he meant to hurt me? I asked. Leela's hands paused. She sat back slowly and looked at me, not judging, not pitying, just present. Hurt is hurt, she said. Intent doesn't change the bruise on your face, or the fear in your voice. I closed my eyes. Her honesty stung, but in a healing way. At sunrise, the doctor confirmed everything was okay with the baby. He suggested I rest for a few days, avoid stress, stay hydrated, all the usual instructions. When he left, I sat up slowly and finally looked at myself in the small mirror on the wall. My cheek was red and slightly swollen, not terrible, but visible. I touched it gently, then lowered my hand before the tears could fall. A soft knock came at the door. Emily? It was Mark. I didn't answer, but the nurse opened the door anyway, looked at him for a long moment, and then stepped aside. He walked in with careful steps, like the floor might break if he moved too quickly. His clothes were wrinkled. His eyes looked like he hadn't slept because he hadn't. He stopped near the window. Not too close, not too far. Can I sit? He whispered. I nodded slowly. He sat in the chair beside the bed but leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands interlocked like he was trying to hold himself together. I know you don't want to talk to me, he said. And you don't have to. Not now. Not ever if you don't want to. But I need to say some things. His voice was trembling in a way I had never heard before. I don't understand myself anymore, he said. I'm angry all the time. I'm scared all the time. I'm failing at everything. And I took that out on you, on our baby. Tears gathered in his eyes, but he didn't wipe them. I should never have touched you. I know that, and I don't expect you to forgive me. He swallowed hard. But I want to get help, real help, not just saying it, actually getting it. I looked at him, then really looked. Not at his face, but at his eyes. I saw fear. I saw guilt. I saw the man he used to be fighting the man he had become. I don't want our child to grow up afraid of me, he whispered. And I don't want you to live like this. I took a slow breath. Mark, my voice broke. I don't know what comes next. I know, he said quietly. And whatever you choose, I'll accept it. For the first time in months, he wasn't defensive. He wasn't guarded. He wasn't blaming me. He was just broken. And broken things need time. Sometimes space. Sometimes distance. They discharged me that afternoon, but I told Mark I wasn't going home with him. Not yet. He nodded, accepting it without argument. He offered to drive me to my mother's house. I refused gently. I need to do this alone, I said. He understood. He walked beside me to the exit doors, but he didn't touch me, didn't reach for my hand, didn't even open the door for me, afraid it might feel like pressure. Before I stepped outside, he whispered, I'm going to the counseling center today, not tomorrow, today. I nodded but didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart wasn't ready. My mother, Janet, opened the door before I even knocked. She gasped when she saw my face. "Oh, sweetheart, come inside, sit, let me look at you." I felt small again, like a child running home after scraping her knee. She didn't ask what happened right away. She wrapped me in a gentle hug, careful of my belly. I cried not loud, but softly, the way people cry when they've been strong for too long. She made me warm tea and sat on the couch across from me, her knees touching mine. "Tell me what happened," she said quietly. I told her everything, slowly, carefully, honestly. She didn't interrupt. She didn't yell. She didn't curse his name. She listened. When I finished, she took my hands. "I'm proud of you for leaving," she said, "even if it's temporary." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I don't know what to do next," I whispered. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "You just have to take care of yourself and that baby. The rest will come." Her calmness soothed me. I slept in my old bedroom that night, the same room where teenage me had dreamed about a fairy tale marriage, the same room where young me believed love would always be simple. Life has a way of teaching us what fairy tales never mention. Love is not enough without safety, respect, and consistency. Over the next few days, Mark sent short messages. "Went to counseling today. Signed up for anger management. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you and the baby are okay. I'm here when you're ready." He never guilted me, never pressured me, never asked when I was coming home. My mother watched me read his messages with a quiet expression. One evening she said, "Do you feel safe with him?" I shook my head. "Not yet." "Then you stay here until you do. And if that never happens, that's okay too." Her support felt like a blanket around my heart. A few days later, the hospital arranged for me to meet with a social worker named Diane. She was gentle, calm, and experienced with situations like mine. She asked questions that were hard to answer. "Has this happened before? Has he ever threatened you? Do you feel this could happen again? Do you feel responsible for his anger?" I told her the truth. "No, it never happened before. No, he never threatened me. Yes, I do feel it could happen again. Maybe not soon, but someday. And yes, I do feel responsible sometimes." She nodded understandingly. "That's common," she said. "But your feelings of responsibility don't mean you are responsible. Abuse is always a choice made by the person who harms, not the person who receives the harm." Her words settled deep into my chest. She gave me pamphlets, support group contacts, and her direct number. "You don't have to leave him forever," she said gently. "But you do have to protect yourself and your child, whatever that looks like for you." I appreciated that she didn't push one path. She gave me options. She gave me space to think. A week later, Mark asked if he could come see me at my mother's house, in the living room, with her present. He didn't fight the condition. He arrived with his eyes red, like he'd been crying in the car. He held a small bag with groceries. "Nothing fancy, fruit, crackers, juice. For you," he said softly. "For the baby." My mother thanked him politely and stayed in the room, knitting, pretending not to listen. Mark sat across from me, his hands clasped. "I've gone to 3 counseling sessions," he said, "and anger management. And I'm meeting with a grief therapist next week." I nodded. He took a deep breath. "I know I broke your trust. I know I hurt you. And I know that might be the last time we ever live under the same roof." My heart tightened. "But even if we never get back together," he continued, voice shaking, "I want to be someone our child can be proud of. Someone who can't ever hurt you again. Someone better than I have been." He paused, swallowing. "I don't want excuses. I don't want forgiveness handed to me. I want to earn whatever part of your trust I can." There was sincerity in his voice. Real, raw sincerity. But sincerity does not erase trauma. It does not undo fear. It does not rewind time. I looked down at my hands. "I need time," I whispered. "I know," he said. "And space." "I know. And you need to stay in counseling." "I will." He stood, nodded to my mother, and walked out quietly. I watched him leave, a strange mix of sadness and relief washing over me. My mother and friends planned a small baby shower a few weeks later. Nothing fancy. Just a few women sitting in the backyard under the warm Kentucky sunshine. They laughed, talked, and handed me tiny clothes, soft blankets, and calming lotions. But even among love, my mind kept drifting. To Mark, to the future, to the unknown. One of my closest friends, Mia, took me aside. "You don't have to decide about him before the baby comes," she said. "You just have to decide about you." I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. I'm scared, I whispered. Of him? No, of choosing wrong. She squeezed my hands. There's no perfect choice in situations like this. There's only the choice that honors your peace. Her words stayed with me for days. One afternoon, I found an envelope slipped under my mother's door. It had my name on it in Mark's handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter, not long, not dramatic, just honest. He wrote, I am learning things I never understood before. I am seeing parts of myself I didn't want to see. I am realizing that grief does not excuse harm, and fear does not excuse anger. What I did was wrong, completely wrong, and I will carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But I will not let it shape our child's life. If you never come back, I will understand. If you do, I will spend the rest of my life proving I am safe. Thank you for taking care of our baby when I failed to take care of you. I held the letter against my chest, not because it healed me, but because it showed me he was at least trying to heal himself. My own counselor, Miss Hart, listened carefully as I told her everything: Mark's messages, his visit, his letter. She folded her hands gently. People can change, she said, but change is not a promise. It's a process, and it takes time, months, sometimes years. I nodded slowly. Your safety must come first, she continued. And safety is not only physical, it's emotional, spiritual, mental. I exhaled softly. You're carrying two lives right now, she said. Yours and your baby's. You need a peaceful environment to bring that baby into the world. Her words were not pushy. They were grounding. At night, lying in my childhood bed, I asked myself questions that had no clear answers. Do I still love him? Yes. Love does not disappear the moment someone hurts you. If only it did, life would be easier. Can I trust him? Not yet. Trust is built like a house, destroyed in seconds, rebuilt one slow brick at a time. Can he change? Maybe. But maybe is not enough when a baby is involved. Do I want our child to grow up without a father? No. But I also don't want them growing up fearing one. So what do I choose? My mind circled the question like a bird that can't land. And that's when I realized, this wasn't a decision I needed to make while pregnant. This was a decision to make when I felt strong again, not broken. A few days later, the nurse, the same woman who spoke that powerful sentence, called me. Her name was Margaret. She asked gently, how are you feeling? I told her I was healing slowly. She said, I didn't mean to shock him with that sentence that night. I meant to protect you. I know, I whispered. She hesitated before saying something that stayed with me. You don't have to decide what his apology means. You only have to decide what your safety means. Simple, steady, true. Toward the end of my 7th month, something happened that changed everything. The turning point of my story did not arrive the way I expected. There was no dramatic phone call, no confrontation, no sudden moment of courage or fear. It came quietly, like most life-changing moments do. It began one cool morning in late September, when Kentucky air feels crisp and soft at the same time. I had just stepped outside my mother's house to sit on the porch with a cup of warm chamomile tea. The baby had been moving gently, slow rolls beneath my ribs, almost as if he sensed something was shifting inside me. Mom stood in the doorway, adjusting her sweater. Did you sleep okay? She asked. Well enough, I said, which was half true. I slept, yes, but my dreams were tangled. Mark's face, the hospital room, the nurse's words, the baby's heartbeat. Mom nodded in that quiet way she had, then went back inside to finish laundry. I rocked slowly on the porch chair, holding my belly and humming, a habit I'd developed ever since the baby started responding to sound. It was peaceful. Then my phone vibrated. I glanced at the screen. It was Mark. For weeks, he had only sent short, respectful messages, updates about therapy, notes about baby books he was reading. No pressure, no demands. But this time, it was a call, his first call since the night in the air. My heart tightened. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello? His voice came through soft, gentle, hesitant. Emily, something happened. I don't want to upset you, but I need to tell you. My grip on the phone tightened. What is it? I was in therapy today, he said, breath shaky, and my counselor asked if there was anything from my childhood I've been avoiding. I waited, not sure where he was going. And I remembered something I had pushed away for years. He paused, exhaled shakily. Emily, my father used to hit my mother. The world around me seemed to fade a little, not in fear, but in clarity. He continued, not often, but enough for her to be scared. Enough for me to hide in my room. Enough for him to apologize every time and promise it would never happen again. My breath caught. I told myself it wasn't abuse, he whispered. Because it didn't happen every day. Because he was a good dad most of the time. Because he loved us. But I realized something today. His voice broke. I became him. I closed my eyes. The confession was not an excuse. It was a wound, a deep one. Mark, I whispered, I'm not telling you this to get sympathy, he said, voice trembling. I'm telling you because I don't want our child to live with fear the way I did. I want to break the cycle, Emily. I have to. His breathing was uneven. I'm going to enroll in an intensive program, he said. A 12-week one, 4 sessions a week. Therapy, accountability partners, all of it. I exhaled slowly. That's good, I whispered. It's good you want to do the work. I do, he said. But I also need to be honest about something else. My heart beat faster. What is it? He hesitated long enough for me to feel the weight. I wasn't just angry that night, he said quietly. I was terrified. Terrified of losing everything. Terrified of being a bad father. Terrified of ending up alone the way I felt after Dad died. His voice softened even more. And when you asked if I ate dinner, I felt like you were reminding me of all the ways I was failing. I swallowed hard. That doesn't excuse anything, he said quickly. I know that. I'm not trying to justify what I did. I'm just finally understanding the feelings behind the anger. And I'm working on them. Really working. Silence stretched between us. Then he whispered, Emily, I don't want you to come home. Not now. Not until I can look you in the eyes without shame. You deserve safety and peace. For the first time since the night he hit me, I felt a small piece of tension lift. Because his words weren't selfish. They weren't manipulative. They weren't desperate. They were honest. We talked for a few more minutes. He didn't ask about us. He asked about the baby. About how I was sleeping. About whether my back still hurt. When the call ended, I sat very still, letting everything settle inside me. The real turning point came a week later. It was early evening. I was in the kitchen with Mom, chopping strawberries while she prepared chicken soup. The baby had been unusually quiet all day. At first, I brushed it off. Babies have quiet days. But then the silence stretched and stretched. No rolls, no kicks, no nudges. My stomach tightened. Mom, I whispered, voice thin. I haven't felt him move much today. She paused, spoon halfway to the pot. How long has it been? Since this morning. Her face changed, calm, but alert. Sit down, she said softly. Let's try something. She handed me a cold popsicle. Eat this. Sometimes cold sugar wakes them up. I did. Nothing. She lifted my shirt slightly and pressed her hand gently to my stomach. Sweetheart, she whispered to the baby. Mommy needs to feel you, okay? Just one kick. Silence. My breath grew shaky. Mom, I'm scared. She nodded gently, already grabbing her keys. We're going to the hospital. Right now. On the way to the hospital, I held my stomach with both hands. Please, I whispered to my baby. Just move once. Just tell me you're okay. Mom kept glancing at me with soft, steady eyes. We'll get answers soon, she said. Her voice didn't shake. Not once, but I saw her hand gripping the steering wheel tightly. 20 minutes felt like hours. When we arrived, they took me back immediately because of the baby's decreased movement. A nurse placed the fetal monitor on my stomach. The room was cold, too bright, too quiet. I held my breath, then a heartbeat, strong, steady, clear. I covered my mouth with both hands as tears ran down my cheeks. Mom exhaled deeply, whispering, Thank God. The doctor came in soon after. The baby is okay, he said, but you're showing signs of high stress. I nodded slowly, wiping tears. You need rest, Emily, he said gently. Your emotional state affects the baby more than you realize. His words settled deep inside me. Stress, fear, the trauma of the last few weeks. My baby had felt it all. That realization pierced me. I realized that protecting myself wasn't just about me. It was about this tiny heartbeat inside me, this life that depended on my emotional safety. That night, lying in a hospital bed with monitors beeping softly, I understood something clearly. Even if Mark changed, even if he healed, even if he became the best father he could be, I could not return to him until I healed too. Because fear lingers, trauma lingers, stress lingers, and my baby could not grow in a world where my heart was constantly tight. When I was discharged the next morning, I sent Mark a message. Baby is okay. I had a scare, but everything is fine now. I'm going to stay with mom until after the birth, he replied within minutes. I understand. I want the baby safe. I want you safe. Take all the time you need. Those words didn't solve everything, but they mattered. They were proof that he was letting go of control, proof he was trying to grow. 3 days later, Mark's sister Holly called me. Her voice was shaky. Emily, are you okay? Mom told me what happened. Yes, I said. We're fine. She hesitated. I think you should know. Mark broke down last night. My stomach tightened. How? He cried for hours, she said softly. He told mom everything. The hitting, the counseling, the guilt, the nightmares, everything. I exhaled slowly. He said, she continued, if she never forgives me, I'll understand. But I'll never forgive myself if I don't change. Her voice cracked. He's really trying, Emily. I knew that. But knowing someone is trying doesn't erase the need to protect yourself. Thank you for telling me, I whispered. One afternoon, while mom rested, I went into the small spare room she had prepared as a nursery for me and the baby. There was a white crib by the window, a rocking chair in the corner, a bookshelf with soft, pastel-colored books, and on the dresser, something I hadn't seen before, a framed photo. It was of me and Mark, taken 2 years earlier at a picnic. We were smiling, happy, safe. Mom must have put it there, a gentle reminder of where love had once lived. I stared at the picture for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel bitterness. I felt grief. Grief for what we were. Grief for what we lost. Grief for what might never be again. But I also felt something unexpected. Hope. Not the hope of going back. Not the hope of fixing everything quickly. Just the hope that healing was possible for me, for him, for our child. Slowly, quietly, patiently. Healing begins in the smallest moments. In soft breaths. In quiet mornings. In deciding to protect yourself even when your heart is still tender. One night, after mom fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a letter to Mark. I didn't send it, but writing it changed something inside me. I wrote, I don't hate you, but I don't trust you yet. Trust doesn't grow from apologies. It grows from consistency, from time, from safety. I want you to heal, not for me, for yourself, for our child. Love cannot survive where fear lives. And right now, fear is still here in my body, in my memories, in the way my breath changes when I think of that night. But healing is here too, growing little by little, like a seed in winter soil. I don't know what the future holds for us, but I know this. I want peace for our baby, and I want peace for myself. When I finished writing, I folded the letter and placed it inside my journal. The simple act of putting my feelings onto paper felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. One late afternoon, a car pulled into the driveway. I looked out the window. It was Mark, but he didn't come to the door. Instead, he sat in his car with the engine off. Mom peeked over my shoulder. Do you want me to tell him to leave? She asked gently. No, I whispered. Let me see what he does. We watched for a few minutes. Then Mark got out, walked to the porch, and placed something carefully on the steps. A small bouquet of wildflowers, and a note. He didn't knock. He didn't wait. He didn't try to see me. He placed the flowers down with quiet humility, then turned around and left. I opened the front door slowly and picked up the note. It said, these are not for forgiveness. They're not for answers. They're just for peace. For you. For the baby. I'm giving you the space you asked for, but I'm here when you're ready. Mark, I held the flowers close. They smelled like the woods behind his father's old shop, earthy, gentle, honest. I realized then that the turning point wasn't his therapy. It wasn't my hospital scare. It wasn't even the moment he admitted his childhood trauma. The real turning point was this. He finally let go of control. He finally understood boundaries. He finally respected space. And in that quiet moment, with the soft scent of wildflowers rising in the air, I felt the first true spark of healing for both of us. After the flowers on the porch, something in my heart shifted, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that suddenly healed the past or erased the fear. It was small, quiet, like a door that had been closed for months finally letting in a thin line of light. I didn't rush to open that door. I simply let the light exist. For the first time since that night in the air, I felt myself breathing in a way that wasn't tied to fear or worry. A slow breath, a steady breath, a breath that felt like my own. Healing does not arrive all at once. It arrives in moments. Moments like flowers left without expectation. Moments like silence respected. Moments like space honored. And that was the beginning of my resolution, not a conclusion, not an ending, but the start of finding peace. My 8th month passed slowly. My belly felt heavier. My back ached more each week. Mom fussed over me in the sweetest ways, bringing pillows, warm towels, herbal teas, and soft lullaby music she claimed would soothe the baby. Sometimes, late at night, I'd sit in the rocking chair in the nursery she prepared and think about the future. Not the whole future, just the next few weeks. Just giving birth, just holding my baby. Mark and I still didn't see each other, but he sent occasional, short messages. Finished week 4 of the program, reading about infant safety today, started journaling like my counselor suggested. I hope you're resting. Tell the baby I said goodnight. He never pushed, never asked when I'd come home, never hinted at getting back together. He released control the way you release a delicate bird, slowly, gently, carefully. This was new for him, new for us, new for the world we were trying to rebuild piece by piece. One evening, while Mom peeled potatoes in the kitchen, she asked, "Have you thought of names yet?" I smiled softly. "A few." "What about Mark?" she asked gently. "Does he want to be part of naming the baby?" I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, "I'd like him to, but I'm not ready to ask." Mom nodded, understanding. She placed a warm hand on mine. "Choose a name that brings you peace," she said, "not pressure." Later that night, while lying in bed, I whispered a few names to my belly. "Lucas?" The baby rolled gently. "Evan?" A small kick. "Adam?" Silence. I laughed softly. "Okay, not Adam." I didn't choose the name yet. I wanted to wait until I saw his face, until I held him, until something inside me clicked. One afternoon, I heard a gentle knock on the door. Mom opened it, then looked back at me with a tender expression. "It's Linda," she said, "Mark's mother." She stepped inside with slow, careful steps, holding a casserole dish and a warm smile. "Hello, Emily," she said softly. I stood up, a little awkward. "Hi, Linda." She set the dish on the table and looked at me with sad, loving eyes. "I'm not here to talk about Mark," she said gently. "I'm here to check on you, on my grandbaby." I exhaled quietly, relieved. She sat beside me on the couch. "You're glowing," she said, "and exhausted." I laughed weakly. "That sounds about right." She hesitated before continuing. "I want you to know something," she said. "I love my son, but I do not excuse what he did, and I support you whatever choice you make." Tears welled in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. She placed her hand over mine. "And if you ever need anything, anything at all, I am here. For you, for the baby." Her support felt warm and unconditional, the kind of quiet love that doesn't demand or expect, only offers. As she left, she hugged me gently. "Take care of yourself, sweetheart," she whispered. "That little one needs a strong mother, and you are stronger than you know." Around week 36, I woke up with a strange heaviness in my chest, not sadness, not fear, but a deep, aching grief. For everything we lost, for everything that shattered, for everything that would never go back to the way it was. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and sat on the floor with warm water falling over me. And I cried, not quietly, not in the controlled way I had been crying for weeks. I cried with years of held intention. I cried with the weight of a broken marriage. I cried with the fear of raising a baby alone. I cried with the love I still felt for Mark. I cried with the part of me that didn't want to give up, and the part of me that knew I needed to protect myself. Mom found me sitting by the shower door. She didn't ask questions. She didn't say a word. She simply sat on the bathroom floor beside me and held my hand. When my tears finally slowed, she whispered, "This is healing, sweetheart. Don't be ashamed of it." I rested my head on her shoulder. For the first time in a long time, I felt lighter. A few days later, Mark sent a message. "My counselor wants to meet with you only if you're willing, not as a couple, just to help both of us navigate communication before the baby comes. No pressure, just an invitation." I stared at the screen for a long time. Mom looked at me. "You don't have to say yes," she said softly. "I know," I replied, "but I think I want to." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was preparation. Preparation for being co-parents. Preparation for the future. preparation for the conversations we could no longer avoid once the baby arrived. I typed back, "I'll come." When I walked into the counselor's office, Mark stood up but didn't step closer. He simply nodded gently. "You look well," he said softly. "Thank you," I replied. We sat on opposite sides of the small room, a round table between us, soft lamps, warm lighting, tissues on the table, a room built for fragile hearts. The counselor, Dr. Avery, smiled kindly. "Thank you both for being here," she said. "This is not a reconciliation session. This is a communication session for co-parenting and emotional clarity." She turned to Mark. "Mark, share what you want Emily to hear today." He took a slow breath. "I want you to know that I have not forgiven myself," he said, "but I'm learning not to let that guilt control me. I'm learning how to manage my emotions, how to recognize triggers, how to pause before reacting, and how to understand the roots of my fear." He looked down, then up at me. "I won't ask you to come home. I won't ask you to give us another chance. I won't ask you to trust me yet. I know I have to earn that if it ever comes back at all." He paused. "What I will ask," he continued, "is that we raise our child with honesty, peace, and respect, even if we are living apart." I swallowed hard. The counselor turned to me. "And you, Emily? What do you want him to hear?" I breathed slowly. "I want you to know that I don't hate you," I said softly. "I'm scared, but I'm not angry. I want our child to feel safe, to feel loved, to grow in a home without shouting or fear or tense silences." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I can do that," he whispered. And I added, "I need more time. I don't know what our future looks like, but I know I need time to heal." He nodded again. "I understand." We talked for an hour, about boundaries, about co-parenting, about my due date, about how he could be involved without overwhelming me. It was peaceful, respectful, kind. When we finished, Mark stood but didn't reach for me. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Thank you for trying," I replied. We left separately, but I left with a small sense of closure, not the ending, but a page gently turned. Around week 38, I entered the nesting phase, the overwhelming urge to clean, prepare, organize, and make everything perfect before the baby arrived. Mom found me folding tiny clothes at midnight. "Sweetheart," she laughed softly, "you need sleep more than perfect drawers." But I kept folding. Little socks, little shirts, little blankets, each one a reminder that a new life was coming, a life that deserved love, safety, and stability. I was ready, nervous, but ready. Just when I thought I had finally found emotional balance, life threw another unexpected turn. It was a quiet afternoon. Mom was in the garden. I was on the couch, rubbing my belly, humming to the baby. My phone buzzed. It was Mark, not a text, a call. I hesitated, then answered. "Emily." His voice was tight, panicked. I need to tell you something. Something important." "What is it?" I whispered. "I'm at the ER." My heart dropped. "Are you okay?" "It's not me," he said. "It's my mother." I stood. "What happened?" "She collapsed at the house," he said, voice trembling. "They think it might be her heart." I grabbed my coat, breath shaking. "I'm coming," I said. "Emily, you don't have to," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but I'm coming." And in that moment, everything shifted again. Not back into romance, not back into a relationship, but into something quieter. Humanity, care, compassion. And this moment led directly into the final events before my baby arrived. When I arrived at the ER, I saw Mark sitting alone in the waiting room. His elbows rested on his knees, his hands clasped together, his whole body hunched like a man carrying more weight than he knew how to bear. When he looked up and saw me, something in his eyes softened, not with hope, not with expectation, but with gratitude. "You came," he whispered. "I did," I said. He didn't move to hug me, didn't reach for my hand. He simply nodded, eyes glistening. "Mom's in a room," he said. "They're running tests." We sat in silence for a long time. Not tense silence, not strained, just human silence. Eventually, he said quietly, "I didn't want to call you, but she asked for you." My breath hitched. "For me?" He nodded. "She said she wanted to tell you something." Soon after, a nurse guided us to Linda's room. She looked tired but stable, pale but smiling. "Emily," she whispered as I stepped in. "You came." I nodded and held her hand gently. She squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. "I want you to promise me something," she said. I swallowed. "Anything. Promise me you'll raise that baby with love," she whispered. No fear, no shame, no secrets, just love. Tears gathered in my eyes. I promise, I said softly. She turned her head toward Mark, who stood quietly near the wall. And you, she said, voice trembling, you keep doing the work. Even if you never get Emily back, even if you feel hopeless, even if it's hard, healing is not for her. It's for you. And for that baby. Mark covered his face with one hand as tears slipped past his fingers. I will, Mom, he whispered. I promise. She nodded slowly, then closed her eyes to rest. When we stepped outside, Mark leaned against the wall and let out a breath he had been holding for years. She almost died, he whispered, and I realized something while I was waiting for her. He paused, then continued, voice shaking. I can't undo what I did to you. I can't make you trust me again. I can't erase the past, but I can make sure the past never repeats itself. I nodded gently. That's all anyone can ask, I said. He looked at me not as a husband seeking forgiveness, but as a man accepting responsibility. If staying apart is what keeps you safe, he whispered, then I'll support that. If we co-parent from a distance, I'll do it with respect. If one day you want to try again, I'll be grateful. But if you don't, I'll still be grateful. Because you're alive, and our baby is safe. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Something in me healed a little at those words, not enough to erase the pain, but enough to loosen its grip. 2 weeks later, in the quiet calm of early morning, my contractions started. Mom drove me to the hospital while I breathed through the waves of pain. When the doctor said it was almost time, I told the nurse, please call Mark. He arrived 10 minutes later, breathless, eyes shining with fear and relief. He didn't touch me, didn't crowd me. He stayed near the foot of the bed, asking softly, do you need water? Do you want me to move? Do you want quiet? When our son finally entered the world, his cry was soft but strong, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. They placed him on my chest, warm, tiny, perfect. Mark wiped his eyes, whispering, he's beautiful. Oh God, Emily, he's beautiful. I looked at my baby and felt a wave of clarity. His name, I whispered, is Lucas. Mark smiled through tears. That's perfect. For a moment, the three of us existed in pure, quiet love, not the romantic kind, not the unbroken kind, but the human kind. The kind built through pain and truth and effort. Today, as I hold Lucas close and feel his breath against my chest, I understand something I didn't understand before. Healing is not a straight line. It is slow, uneven, messy, tender. Sometimes healing means staying. Sometimes it means leaving. Sometimes it means creating distance. Sometimes it means building something new from the pieces that survived. For me, healing meant choosing peace, choosing safety, choosing to let love exist but on healthy terms. Mark and I are not the couple we once were. We may never be again, but we are parents. We are learning. We are growing. We are healing. And that, I've learned, is enough. Because in the end, a child deserves a peaceful mother, a peaceful home, a peaceful start. And so does that mother herself.